Hey, Debbie is here to talk to you about a project I've been working on and telling you I'll be doing many weeks now. So I'm trying to finish this, but here's what I've got going on. Now, female endurance athletes. Dr. Dan Plews, his program EndureIQ, I've been doing, and they have a great section on the female athlete. I've also been reading Dr. Stacy Sims' new book, and I have her old book called Roar: Women Are Not Small Men. I've also listened to Dr. Mindy Pels and Cynthia Thurlow, Dr. Anna Kabeka, and Ben Azadi. What I'm trying to do is merge what they're saying and then listening to what Dr. Stacy Sims is saying in Dr. Dan Plew's program for the low carb athlete. Combine all that information together for the aging female athlete. How can we map our training and fueling and fasting, if appropriate, with our hormone cycle? So here's what I've got. If you can watch the video, female endurance athletes. Here, day one of your cycle is first day of bleeding. It's going to be TMI for some people, but TMI is what really happens. So early follicular phase. Follicular phase is the first half of your phase, and then we've got second half luteal phase with ovulation in the middle. But then we break it up: early follicular, mid follicular, late follicular, ovulation, ideal days, if we're all working right, not where I am perimenopausal, early luteal phase, mid luteal phase, and late luteal phase. Here's what happens. Day 1 to day 5, we have our lower hormone levels. So we're more like a guy, a man. Our testosterone, estrogen, progesterone are all at their lowest levels of the month. Mid follicular, our estrogen starts to rise, progesterone is still low. Late follicular, days 9 to 13, approximately, estrogen starts to continue to rise, progesterone's still low, and then we hit ovulation, which varies depending on your age and stressors. Ovulation around days 14 to 16. Estrogen is at its peak and testosterone is at its highest. So great time. We'll talk about doing strength and more power at this time. And then we hit, after ovulation, we start to have early luteal phase, days 15, 16 to 20. Estrogen still higher, progesterone starting to rise, and mid luteal phase, estrogen's lowering and progesterone's going up. And then we hit late luteal phase the week before your cycle begins. Testosterone, estrogen, and progesterone are all going down, getting you ready to have a baby or start day one all over again. Okay, so now let's look at that for exercise. If we are an endurance athlete, if you are training for a marathon, trail running, cycling, Ironmans, triathlons, whatever, longer distance stuff, here's what EndureIQ program talks about. And we'll talk to Julia, who's done this research on this area, next month. Now, exercise type: lighter load endurance, days 1 to 5. Low intensity, specific strength areas. And then we had mid follicular. So days 1 to 5, beginning of your cycle, you really don't feel great a lot of times. And we want to still take it easy, and then we can pick it up. Days 6 to 8, approximately, low intensity exercise. So doing more your maffetone type of training here, that max aerobic function, low intensity, high volume aerobic work. So great time, days 1 to about days 13 before ovulation, to really focus on your endurance training and working on the why is what we'll talk to Julia, because she's done a lot of the research on this. Now, so day 1 to first half of your cycle is great endurance training. So kind of match your training schedule for a race, take advantage of those days to get the endurance training in at low heart rate. Now, when we hit late follicular before ovulation, then we can start to add in some more higher intensity work, so more interval. We don't want to do the black hole training, remember. We're doing low heart rate or high heart rate, high, low heart rate interval training or low base training. So still, doing lower volume, higher intensity, more anaerobic based workouts right before ovulation. And then when ovulation occurs, days 14 to 16, sometimes it might be day 20 if you're getting perimenopausal, but strength and power focus should be what we're doing here. Because remember, your testosterone's at its highest. So we want to focus ovulation, changing your workout schedule. So you're working on more strength specific training, VO2 max, and speed. So doing good, race pace intervals, more tempo, doing some HIIT training, allowing for recovery in between. That doesn't mean do that every day. And then doing some more strength. And then early luteal phase after ovulation, we're good at high intensity, add in that low volume work again, anaerobic based workout. So we call it like 80-20, 80% of the time you're doing low heart rate, 20% high intensity, anaerobic based workouts. Focus on strength specific training for your sport. So example, triathlete, swim, bike, run, VO2 max, and speed work this time. Now, mid-luteal phase is days 21 to 24. Estrogen's lowering, progesterone's rising. So when we want higher progesterone to happen, we want to be what Dr. Mindy calls this nurture phase. So you got to be careful towards the end of your cycle. So now we're going to do lower intensity and higher volume aerobic work. So we're going to take advantage of ovulation, early luteal phase, doing more of the HIIT training. Now we're going to wind it down, go back to that endurance training day. And then days 25 until your day 1 starts, we want to do low intensity. So that's where I'm matching in my clients their deload week. So we want to have a recovery week, this last week of your cycle, 75% of your normal training load. We want the body to increase progesterone. So we do not want to increase cortisol. Progesterone likes to have cortisol lower. So maintaining normal training schedule, but 75% less, right? So we're going to cut everything down. Avoid skill and precision training because you might not feel it. Reduce stress, reduce training volume. Include anaerobic and power-based work, but short bursts. All right, so let's kind of go down the next part of my chart. How I'm doing the strength workout. Eventually, Erin Carson and I of EC Fit, she's in Boulder and trains a lot of pro athletes. She and I are going to put together the strength training program. I created this month-long program, and it'll be a 3-month program on training peaks. So I'm using it with my clients right now that I'm coaching when I do their personalization programs. So the beginning of your cycle, easier workout days, we're going to do strength more 10 to 15 reps. And then we're going to go a little bit lower intensity with higher volume. Good time to increase your distance. So remember that first part of follicular, we're adding in like days 5 to days 8, 10. We're adding in more of our volume training. And then strength, we want to do like more strength building, 5 to 8 reps. And then we hit towards ovulation, lower intensity, higher volume right before ovulation. Distance training is great. The max aerobic function, still working on their strength. And then ovulation, we remember that testosterone is high. So we want to really focus on high weight, fewer reps, like 3 to 5 repetitions, maybe doing 3 exercises 5 times and taking a break in between to allow yourself to recover and then go hit that exercise a little harder. It's like maybe some squats with a barbell or dumbbells and deadlifts with a kettlebell or weights or bar rack. And then doing a chest press, doing a pull up or lat pull down. So working on heavy weights with good form and proper core activation and really focusing on that 3 to 5 repetitions with more sets around ovulations. And then heavy weights, HIIT training, you could start to add in right before, like after ovulation and before luteal gets a little bit more nurturing phase. We want HIIT training 2 to 3 times a week. So you're having 2 days of rest in between lower stuff. So you have to map your schedule out, allowing recovery time. So HIIT training is really important. Stacy Sims talks about this in her book. She calls it SIT, short interval training, 20, 30 seconds all out. Say you're doing that, for 10 minutes on off, or maybe like a 10 times 1 minute sprint. I just showed like hill repeats 20 seconds. And then you get to luteal phase and we have low intensity, easy cardio, 30, 45 minutes, I was saying, endurance, more reps on strength training, like 10 to 15 repetitions this week. And then that last week of our cycle before we start again, good week for restorative, doing yoga, doing Pilates, doing just easy swimming, working on some skills and swimming drills, and just keeping that heart rate low and keeping that cortisol low. So remember, after 45 minutes of a cardio workout, your cortisol's increased. So we really want to lower that cortisol so it's not excessively high. Lower, I mean optimal levels, because not too low, not too high, Goldilocks effect for everything. So what happens with our metabolism? Well, we've got mood changes, increased stress, poor reaction times, poor perception of exertion, and immune suppression when our cycle starts, so days 1 to 5. And then we have increase in intramuscular and hepatic glucose storage and uptake. And then we have increased glycogen, fat, protein, and electrolyte stores before ovulation. And then you'll have possible changes in behavior and training potential around ovulation, and then increased glycogen stores in liver and muscle tissue, increase in fatty acid breakdown, great retention for water and electrolytes. You might be more swelling, but see, this is a good time to do that HIIT training with increased glycogen stores in the liver and muscle, and then we can tolerate more carbohydrates that last week of our cycle, and we'll get to that nutrition next. Greater protein breakdown in luteal phase, so we want to be gentle to ourselves, not having a catabolic state. We want to be more anabolic. I wrote anabolic, it should be catabolic. Endurance is low, increased glycogen storage, increased energy intake, and increased water and electrolytes again. And then end of our cycle, mood changes, increased stress, poor reaction times, poor reception of exertion, everything's is harder at the same pace, immune system suppressed. So then we look at nutrition plan. All right, in EndureIQ, to be fat adapted, we have a different phase that we get towards being fat adapted in your off season as an athlete. So low carb, high fat, sweet spot. And then there's 2 weeks of cold keto that we'll put in certain times of your cycle. Remember, estrogen is days 12 to 14. So we want more estrogen building foods. 2 weeks of cold keto is okay, certain times of the cycle you'll see here. And we'll talk to Julia about this, who put this together. Low carb sweet spot, again, luteal phase, progesterone, hormone surging days, 21 to 28. That's when we want to add more progesterone building, good nutrient dense carbs, that fruit and vegetables that are good to feed, build the nutrients needed for progesterone. And you're not in ketosis that week. And then the end of your cycle, progesterone again, and not doing ketosis. But if we're in the fat adapted phase of finding that sweet spot, kind of finding out what carbs, how many carbs you can tolerate. Now, Dr. Mindy, I just called it the pills, fasting types. Here's where she talks about fasting, but not necessarily for endurance athlete that's doing 2-day workouts. So days 1 to 4, it's more intermittent fasting, 12 to 15 hours, average around 13. Day 5, intermittent fasting around 15 hours. Best days for weight loss fasting methods is days 1 to 10. Days 6 to 10 of your cycle, intermittent fasting up to 17 hours. And this is where you can fit in your longer fasts that Dr. Mindy has in her resetter group, fasting 13 up to 72 hours. And for an athlete, I would do this when you're not training. You shouldn't be exercising a lot during that time, and you should not be stressed. So don't do extended fasting if you're having a lot of stress or you're actually too lean already. You're going to just cause more metabolic chaos. And then no fasting when you're ovulation days, hormone building time here. This is where you add in more carbs. Non-fasting days are 12 to 14 right before ovulation, and then end of your cycle, like days 21 to 28. So those are your non-fasting days. And then intermittent fasting 12 to 15 hours is okay. So like fasting 12 hours shouldn't be a fast. That's just kind of normal, right? So best days for weight loss fasting for the non-athletes, days 15 to 21, around there, then hormone building days, and no fasting, no keto, the end of your cycle, because we want progesterone to get higher, and it requires a little bit more carbs and not ketosis. And carbs means real carbs, not eating the refined flours, sugars, and processed foods. People think of carbs. So Dr. Anna Kabeka has an amazing book called The Menu Pause, and this is a great menu plan. There's 6 days. You can switch them up. So I asked Dr. Anna, where should we place your menu plans in your book based on the female cycle and based on what Dr. Mindy is saying? So Dr. Anna said, first week of your cycle, keto green, that's good AIP program, or the keto green plant-based detox, and the carbohydrate pause is great this time. So more carnivore. And then week 2 of your cycle, keto green cleanse, keto green extreme approved, her keto green plant, and the carnivore pause all through here. And then ovulation, you want to do the carb up menu plan. And you want to do the carb up menu plan the end of your cycle luteal phase. Ovulation time, days, and then the week before your cycle begins, that's when you can add in those healthy carbs. Now, carb up I always have to tell people that doesn't mean junk. It means root vegetables, berries, like tropical fruits. Dr. Mindy talks about having more, potatoes. Maybe most people can't do rice, but doing a little bit more cauliflower and broccoli and more salads. And some people don't do a lot of vegetables because the lectins and oxalates and phytates and everything. So carnivore is actually good to do that last week of your cycle as well. And it helps feed the progesterone. So carb up menu the last week, or I should add in there the carnivore plan. And then keto green extreme after ovulation days 16 to 22. So you can look at Dr. Mindy's or Dr. Anna's book, and it tells you a little bit. Now mood, I need to fill in the blanks here about mood. The other cool stuff I put together is Dr. Aura Ring and heart rate variability scores, resting heart rate, and then talking to Kara from NutriSense, what happens with their insulin. And so here's the last section of my chart. Beginning of your cycle, hormones are lower, body temperature is lower, body temperature is cooler first half of our cycle. Higher heart rate variability, more in parasympathetic state the first half of the cycle. And then the second half of the cycle, luteal, we're more sympathetic, and a heart rate variability will be lower. If you track Aura, like I use my Aura ring, and not to overshare, but I'm on day 2 of my cycle, and my heart rate variability jumped back up to my normal, and my heart rate dropped back down yesterday. And my body temperature dropped too. So it's so fascinating to put this all together if you track your metrics. I don't have NutriSense right now. I need to reorder some CGMs, but it'd be great to check, because here's your less insulin resistance the beginning of your cycle, and your more insulin resistant state later in your cycle. NutriSense, your glucose levels are lower, ovulation, and then you have your luteal phase, your glucose will be higher. So you might see everything kind of different through the cycle if you really pay attention to what's going on in your body and how you'll change. And this is how we can really personalize a training program. This is what I'm doing with my female clients, and then adding in lab testing as a Dutch hormone test, a GI map, blood chemistry panel, a full thyroid panel, which includes the thyroid antibodies, reverse T3, which is the brakes of your thyroid that often is correlated with cortisol being off. Also, higher cholesterol is going to impact your thyroid. So I look at this whole thing and be a health investigator and put people's plan together. But I just wanted to share with you this kind of fun information that I'm working on. And then we'll do a longer podcast with my slide presentation coming to you soon. So that is what I am working on. So thanks for joining me and sharing this little new experiment with you. It'll be fun. And if you want to learn more about getting a personalized coaching program to help match your fueling and training with the elements of the holistic method, that is going to be your nutrition, your exercise, sleep, stress, movement, digestion, and gut health, hydration, and happiness, gratitude, play, laughter is all important. So let me know. Go to debbiepotts.net and set up a discovery call, and we can get started on your new client assessment or my accelerator program, or I often offer a VIP program for 6 months or longer. So talk to you soon. Enjoy.